Thanks for joining us here at KEET-TV. I'm so happy that you're here to watch the story of us. And this is a fabulous project. If you've not watched any of it yet, welcome. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about OV. OV is a fun little platform that we use, PBS uses, to watch movies. You can watch movies across the country and listen to discussions like the one we will be having tonight. Some things to know about OV. Sometimes when you're watching, it might stall and the picture might spin around. If you click on the frame, on the picture on your screen, that might help. The other thing I do is I do the refresh button. I'm not sure on your screen where your refresh button is, but that helps too, to refresh, and you can get caught up into the film and into the discussion. The chat is on the side. We use the chat, which David is chatting with you now. We use that for you to ask questions. And if there's any issues that you think we can solve, sometimes we can, sometimes we cannot. Again, it's a great platform, but sometimes there's staggering. Anyway, moving on, a little rundown of what we're going to do. We're going to show a couple of films, a little intro, and then we're going to show the story of us. But I want to tell you just briefly before we get started that this has been a fabulous project. KEET's been working on it for the past year due to a couple of grants that we received. And tonight you're going to see we were able through this grant to gather stories from our community, our various communities. So I think it'll be really fun for you to see the people and hear our community talk about storytelling and the importance of it. Okay, sit back, relax, and stick around afterwards for the discussion. Thank you for joining us. Hi, welcome back. My name is Katie. I hope you enjoyed the story of us. Thank you so much for watching with us. I want to tell you, because some people online were asking, when is the movie going to be on KEET? It's going to be on Friday, this Friday, the 19th at 8:30 p.m. Again on Tuesday, the 23rd, that'll be at 9:30 p.m. And then finally on the 28th, that's a Sunday, at 11:30 p.m. And I think our program director is going to schedule it in the next few months as well, because we can air it anytime we want to. Thank you for watching with us. Tonight, I want to first give a little background about the project that we were involved with, and then we're going to do some introductions. This is a year-long project. KEET was fortunate to get a couple of grants, and I was able to hire both Jennifer and Allie to help me. Jennifer is a filmmaker and Allie is a storyteller, and both of them were just fabulous to work with and to help the community, all of you, to tell your stories. And I just appreciate the work that we've all done together and working with them and gathering the stories. As you just saw that film, we did 4 of the 6 prompts, 4 of the 6. And this project, it started back in January in 2020, before the pandemic, before everything happened in our country. And American Portrait and PBS, as things developed in our country, they addressed it by creating prompts so people could express themselves as to what was happening. And when they first started this project, they didn't expect to have a pandemic and, you know, our country do what it did. So if you go to AmericanPortrait.org and see the stories, you'll see how they've adapted some of the prompts to that. And they're still adapting them right now. So it's been an evolving project, and KEET was fortunate to have the grant to help them figure out how to do stuff. The first grant was like that, so we would give them feedback. Some of the things they altered, some they did not, but that's okay. We were still able to gather the stories. And, you know, Jennifer was able to reach out to people who maybe didn't know about this project and gather the stories that we needed. We needed to hear from people. And I appreciate that, the outreach that both her and Allie were able to do. Allie gathered so many stories from Petrolia. It's wonderful, wonderful. So I'll stop talking. Why don't you all, let's hand it off to Jennifer.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to work on this project. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, this idea of having people in the community share pieces of their stories and seeing how we all mesh together. And we're all like this tapestry that is a beautiful, beautiful tapestry. But we have to hear from everybody or else it's not complete. So this was really near and dear to my heart. I've done, worked on some films about local topics like the 1964 flood. And it was really important to include those voices of people that aren't normally asked to share their story. So I really enjoyed this. I'm gonna pass it off to Allie now to introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I'm an oral storyteller and I really believe in the power of stories. I want to say not just because of what you can share with somebody else, but also because it deepens your own reflection and your own process of your own life. I had a lot of fun with this project. I had challenges because of COVID-19. So therefore, a lot of the stories that I helped bring about came from Petrolia, except people who came on to the Zoom meetings that we had, and one of them is here. And anyways, it was a really fun thing. And I watching the clips that we just saw where they took and they wove all these people's voices together to make this larger thing was so fun. It was just great. I'm going to pass it to Jenny Hanson because she was on one of my Zoom meetings. So how's that? I'll just keep passing it that way.
Okay. It's lovely to see people here and to see you in person on Zoom. Having looked at the show, incredible, really incredible. Yeah, I took Allie's class in how to do a portrait in 1 minute. Anyway, I'm Jenny Hanson and I've been here for about 20 years and I probably did about 3 efforts at getting minutes and discovered a lot of things, like there's about 20 stories in anything you want to tell. And only some of them will fit into 1 minute. So thus, this was one of many of those. And let me pass it on to, shall I pass it on to somebody else?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, why don't I pass it on to Marianne?
Hi, I'm Marianne Madej. I've been in Humboldt County now for, 42 years, but I grew up in Chicago, and storytelling is a way of me keeping in touch with old friends and family in Chicago. Especially this last year, it's been very polarizing because people are on the opposite ends of the political spectrum, but stories about what's blooming in my garden, what recipe did you make tonight? Those kind of stories, how did we celebrate Christmas 20 years ago? Those kind of stories really helped, I think, bring us together and keep the conversation going and not be shutting each other out of our lives. Who's there? Margo?
Thank you, Marianne. Ayakui, Nicknow Margo Robbins. I come from the traditional Yurok village of Morek along the Klamath River. I am a mom, a grandma, the executive director for the Cultural Fire Management Council and the Indian Education Director for Klamath Trinity School District. I am really happy to be here with everybody this evening, and I am just astounded by some of your stories, just fabulous storytellers. So thank you so much. And I will pass it off to Laurie.
Well, I'm Laurie, Shannon, and first time on Zoom, never participated in a program like this, but I was very glad to have the opportunity. I really liked the prompts. I have a lot of stories to tell. It was kind of figuring out which stories would go with which prompts. I had fun. I wrote about 10 of them. It was really a lot of fun. And so how about if I pass it on to Malia?
Thanks. Hi, my name is Malia, and I am a mother and an educator and daughter of Allie. So I joined this project at her request and had fun making my story with my kids, and probably even more fun watching it with them and watching other people in our family and people in our community share their stories.
Great. Maybe Leanne next.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Leanne Moore, born and raised here in Humboldt County. I actually grew up in Lolita at the Table Bluff Reservation. I am a member of the Wiyot tribe. I grew up in a small 20-acre reservation, and what we did was pick berries every season. And that's how this whole lifestyle of what I've done, from picking berries as a child with my family members to actually picking berries with my 80-year-old dad now as a livelihood, which is a whole spectrum in itself. But lovely to meet everyone, and I love to tell my story, because I always tell my husband I grew up in a vanilla my life, I'm a vanilla person, and he goes, oh no, you have lots and lots to share and lots of stories.
And how about Chip?
Thank you. Yeah, I've lived in Arcata since '73, and lots of events here that I could tell stories about. And when I looked at the prompts, there's a huge variety of prompts. And I think I only got a fraction of the way down the list, and ideas came to me for each of those prompts. And I wrote something for one of them, but this was the only video I did. And as soon as I read, I was raised to believe, it just was obvious to me what I wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. Because those two events with Henry, when I was 9 years old, with Michael when I was 18, and the issue over hair and how we look at people who look different. Just, those were the bookends for what I learned during my teenage years about segregation and attempted integration that didn't really succeed. So I really encourage people to look at the prompts, because I think they're wonderful triggers for memories. And I'm aware I have a lot of memories, and some of them are true. And I love telling stories, and I love hearing stories.
Chip, can I ask you, it didn't exactly change your life, that I had the same experience with the prompt, going down the list of them. Mm-hmm. For me, it was, I took a big risk, and I thought, oh, immediately, it was like, right, I have to do this. Now, and that risk, I said it, but a piece of what happened with several of the other prompts, what I wanted to do was another one on what family means to me, because in fact, I came here and ended up, because I met Redwoods, is why I ended up right here. And I did not know a soul, not one soul. And in fact, I could have written, done another story about how my family, I have no family in this country at all. I'm English once upon a time. But I've been here 2/3 of my life, 3/4 actually, I think now. And I now have this connected group of people. And Humboldt County is this extraordinary place. I think we all feel like that. I have circles within circles connecting with one another. and that was another prompt. And I think the telling of the story or the reading of the prompt really does help trigger one in wanting to tell stuff that made a huge difference in one's own life. You could see that with all those other people on the movie, I thought.
I wanted to add to that, because when you mentioned Humboldt County and how different how wonderful Humboldt County is, and I think of how different it is from a lot of places, like a lot of really urban places. I'm sure that they had a lot of submissions. And I think Katie and I talked about this when she first thought about applying for the grant, is really showing people, showcasing Humboldt County, showing, the amazing people from throughout Humboldt County and all these different lifestyles, and a more rural lifestyle compared to some of these very urban areas that almost dominate the American Portrait Project. And our goal was to get out there and gather some of these more rural stories.
Exactly.
I think we were really successful at it.
Yeah.
I think we did a really good job, everybody. And I'm really, I'm proud of our Humboldt County rural stories. And I think it really helps to have that blend. But I have to also say it has been so fun kind of scrolling through the variety of stories that are out there, because it was, in a pandemic year, a way to literally connect with all kinds of people all over the country. And it goes back to that whole idea, which was originally, I believe, inspired by the photos that were in that Family of Man book that I saw when I was growing up.
Oh.
And this is just like another powerful way to connect. And what a wild thing that it happened during the pandemic.
In our business, we were a very unique position, because since we had to go out every day in the wild, the pandemic didn't affect us very much, because we were out where there's nobody there.
Oh, right.
We saw wild animals. Rarely we see a person, but we're out there where the pandemic didn't really affect my dad and I and what we did. And that was really nice for him. Wasn't so nice for my mom, because she stayed home most of the time, but it was just a very unique position for us to be in.
Can we talk more about storytelling? Margo, looks like you're going to say something.
Oh, you're muted. There we go.
I'm talking while I'm muted. I was saying that I just totally agree. For those of us that live out here in these really rural areas, we were only, I feel like, minimally affected by the pandemic, because we have so much room to move around. We have our gardens and the forests and all of these places that we can still go to and spend time in and not run into other people. And so I just feel like this is such an amazing opportunity to see what other people are doing during these times and sharing stories. For us, we just we'll continue to fish and dry the fish and smoke it and harvest the acorns from the mountain and planted our garden with tomatoes and things like that. And we just kept our immediate family within the circle of who we could see, and we stayed safe that way.
Yeah, going out and gathering stories was really challenging to try and be respectful. Like when I went out and saw Margo, it was, I went and got myself tested, and then I waited 2 weeks before I met up with her. And I did the same thing with Jenny. And it was just like, I still felt like, this is something, it was so much trust on the part of people, me going into their homes and doing this. And I really appreciated everybody who let me do that. It was really awkward. It was like, I've done so much story gathering but to do it during the time of the pandemic was really awkward and hard. And even taking all the precautions we could take, because Margo got tested and I got tested, and then we met up and did it. And still, you know, there was just a little bit of, you know, concern. And then, but we had a wonderful time. We had a wonderful day for sure doing that.
Can we talk about
Definitely did.
the importance of storytelling to our culture, to our who we are as people? That's why this project from American Portraits started, to show what America is.
Yeah.
You know, how is, you know, I grew up, my mom is telling stories all the time. Am I keeping those stories in my head? Sometimes. I share stories as well. What's the importance of storytelling for each of you?
One reason I wanted to tell some stories was because I really didn't like the version of America that was being put out there in the world. And I wanted to know that people to know, anybody who's paying attention, that there's a lot of really nice people out there, a lot of really good experiences people have. And it's not all as some people might depict.
Right. And I guess I wanted to tell my story, or that particular part of my story, because I was alone and am alone and have continued to be alone. So I've spent a lot of time alone that is not part of what I would be doing, Leanne and Margo, I mean, and Ali for that matter. I mean, I'm gregarious, you've figured it out. And I like to be around people, and I was always out doing something, but it was like in the pandemic, ugh, that's very different. But before that, coming across the country, I was from the East Coast for 20 years. And when I left to take this trip, everybody said to me, "You don't have a gun?" I said, "I'll shoot my toes off if I have a gun," you know. I didn't have a cell phone. What were they? You know, it was like before then, because it was 20 years ago. And I did it all alone. And I discovered personally for me that all of the dangers that I had been reading about and hearing about and people were warning me about did not exist for me. I mean, I spent 4 years on the road, with 2 exceptions, and both of them were just simply uncomfortable. And there was one lunatic guy, and I was sitting by a creek, and it was so lovely, and I couldn't, I really had to leave. But nothing was terrible about that. But I'm going to be 80 any minute now. I was like, wait a minute. I took off at 55 alive, I called it, you know. Remember the driving thing was 55 alive? I took off then, but now I'm going to be 80, and I've made this life. Nobody chose Humboldt County except me. Nobody. That's my decision. And that's a gift I want to give to any older woman who is doing anything that she never did before, and people thought she ought to be able to do. And that's really what I got. And all the way across, some woman would come up to me, and I had lots of conversations with women. Not one other single woman at all did not have a dog. Every single woman who was traveling had a dog. Because I don't know, luckily for me, I didn't have a dog. So I went without a dog anyway. But seeing how people lived ruins your notion that they're all awful and they're out to rape you or kill you or do anything to you, really. I mean, maybe they are, but I didn't need any, so.
I think Laurie also had some fun stories too, of living outside.
Yes, I did. When I was going to school in Santa Barbara, just because I started out with not much money and I had some grants and scholarships, but then they had they reduced the amount that they weren't expecting to do. So I was really on a shoestring budget and never found a place to live. But I met some really nice street people. Most of them were vets, some were Vietnam vets, and a couple old just wino type bums, but they were nice, good-hearted. And they showed me some really nice places to stay, and we became pretty good friends. And I was used to camping all my life anyway. So it's not a hardship for me to be camping out. I love waking up outside in the morning, listening to the birds. So yeah, I did that for the 2 years I was my junior and senior year in college at Santa Barbara. But I ended up graduating with honors, and I'm still friends with some of those people.
What prompted me to be part of this is I wanted to memorialize some of our culture, because parts of our culture can never be filmed, photos can never be taken. It's just a memory thing. You have to pass that along, or you have to participate in that activity. This activity I want to memorialize. This is something everybody can see what we do, how we do it, and it doesn't tread on any of these cultural values that we have that you cannot take pictures or film. So I wanted to make sure there was something in our culture that was on film, and if we could share that with everybody.
Very good. I know Margo, I forget if that made it into the film. Jennifer took some beautiful shots of you as well in your traditional,
I think you had the burden basket. Yeah. You had put it on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's one of the traditions I carry on. Please put the dog out. Sorry. That's one of the traditions that I carry on is the art of basket weaving. My grandmother and all the generations before her were basket weavers. In our culture, we use baskets from the time we're born. We carry our babies in baskets until the time that we die. We feed the spirit of the person who has passed on a small basket plate. We use baskets to lift up prayer, to cook with, to eat with, to trap fish, all of those things. And we learned how to make baskets. Our creation stories tell us that we learned how to make baskets from the Wage spirit beings that inhabited this place before we were here. And they made the world as it is today. And some of them took on physical form, and some of them went on to the other plane of existence. But before they left, they taught us what was good to eat and what to use for medicine, and how to the materials to make for baskets, and the way we are to lift up prayer. And so those old time creation stories tell us how things came to be, how they are, and our place in the world, and what we're supposed to do to keep the balance physical and spiritually. So storytelling is a very, very important part of our native culture. We didn't have a written language. Everything was passed down orally. So.
So that reminds me of listening to everybody. It's also about story listening. It's also about really valuing the person in front of you, hearing where they are, and listening with an open heart so that you're actually learning something and not thinking what next to say. But stories can kind of frame this place where the other person's story just enters, and it's a powerful thing, and it's such a strong way that we connect in so many ways. So we always talk about the telling part, but so much is about the listening part.
Yeah, I'll tag on to that, and just my story in the American Portrait was about a tradition I carry on. And one of the reasons that I've put a lot of thought, my light is on a motion sensor. One of the reasons that I have put a lot of thought into the idea of tradition is a reflection of my own experience When I left Humboldt County, I didn't realize how unusual my upbringing was. And when I went away for school and would tell people that, you know, I grew up off grid without electricity, that I never watched TV, that, you know, we grew our own food, people really didn't understand where I was coming from. And they would say, "Are you Amish?" And it felt very otherizing to realize how different my story was. And the first time that I met somebody who grew up similar to me, I had a really powerful connection. I met another person my age who was raised by hippies as well, who had grown up in a bus and experienced a lot of the things that I had experienced. And it just brought in this whole realization, there go my lights. It brought this whole realization that it wasn't just my experience that was different, but that my experience was a piece of an experience that was shared by many people beyond my story. And I think that's one of the important pieces of telling stories, is being able to reach out and connect to those other people and find those commonalities.
Marianne.
Malia, oh, I was going to say, Malia, I know that you work with children, and that was one of the things that I think we struggled a little bit with, was how do we reach out to children to do a project like this? At first, everybody was like, oh, with COVID, we're all looking for things to have kids do. But then it was like, it didn't really materialize like we thought it would. We thought that teachers would work with their classes and they would say, oh, we're going to do this project. And then also I would like to know what Margo thinks about that too, because I know she also works with children. Like, what is a way for us, if we, you know, doing a similar project, to reach out to youth?
Yeah, I did make this project available to my class and had a number of students who elected to be a part of it. I think one of the interesting things about the age group that I work with teenagers, and they share their stories with each other all the time. That's a part of their generational culture. And so that process of sharing these snippets is really familiar to them in a way that I think engaging in this project felt kind of dated and, you know, like this TV, PBIS, okay, we'll do that. Yeah, it maybe a way to engage kids more would be to reach out to them through platforms that they connect with on a more regular basis. I think one of the hardships for my students was the process of, you know, creating a login for this platform that just seemed different and weird, and, you know, building it and getting their permission. But they all have short stories that they do share and want to share with the world, and are sharing constantly with the world. So it's not an unfamiliar, the storytelling part isn't an unfamiliar process, but maybe just not a platform they're familiar with.
Margo, what do you think about that?
I completely agree with you, Malia, that they are constantly sharing their stories in these different kinds of platforms than what we're used to. Like, you know, I do Zoom and I do Facebook, and Facebook is so old school to the kids, but they are always posting different little snippets of what they're doing. And so it is a matter of reaching them through the media that they're currently using, whatever that may be. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Me too. I don't know.
Well, and if we told you by the time you got around to it, it would be different.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You know it.
I was curious, Marianne, can you tell people about the story about your daughter and then your response?
Yeah, so I actually encouraged my daughter to submit a story about when she was almost killed in a rock slide accident about 5 years ago. And because it obviously affected her life completely, and she had a very long recovery, but she luckily is recovered now. But that was something private for her, and for her to be able to put that out, I thought I was proud of her to do that, to be brave enough to let people know what she was going through. It's kind of interesting because I'm a geologist, and it was kind of ironic that a geologist's daughter almost got killed by a rock slide. But then after she submitted the story, she kind of turned around and encouraged me to do something for American Portrait as well, which is totally different than the rock slide story. But it's a part of our family's history, and I'm glad that she put it out there.
Yeah, her story was pretty amazing. I mean, it was a little longer than a minute. How about telling a story in a minute? That was really challenging, I think, for all of us.
That was especially challenging for me, I think. I mean, I know that you all knew that you had a minute and you maybe never questioned it, but as a person who's worked with people doing documentaries, I find that people say the best stuff like way into it. It's like at the very beginning, they're telling, kind of the more, almost the story that they've memorized from having told it to people so many times. But when you question into it, that's when you get into the meat of the story. And so I really appreciated Katie giving me this opportunity to do this, because a lot of times I took like bigger pieces and then I squished them down to a minute and then submitted them. So that was really nice for me to be able to do that. I know a lot of you guys worked on your stories for a while. Chip, I'm wondering about you and your story. I mean, I think you had to probably tell it in time yourself, or some sort of way to get it down to the 1 minute mark. How did that go?
Oh yeah, I had to time myself, and I had to struggle against my North Carolina drawl to get it out more quickly. So, yeah.
I wonder, when you're storytelling, I wonder if that's a natural thing to slip into those storytelling people that we are, maybe from the culture that we came from. And so that was a natural thing for you with storytelling.
Yeah, there are many sounds and speech patterns that will come back to me at times. So yeah, I'm right proud to let you know that.
Very good. It's fun, because Humboldt County, we've been doing these projects from grants, and Humboldt County is such a transitional area. And we have people coming from all over across the country, all around the world, to come here because of our unusual or usual economy, from timber, the lumber industry, to the marijuana industry, to, I think there was gold mining, the fishing, and then the people who stayed here and made this their home, as you've all shown us here, which is special. And we've been able to show it to the rest of the world. That's good.
Yeah.
It's great.
I want to add one other thing about storytelling. We're talking about our personal stories, but as a teacher, I think storytelling is such a compelling way of getting across a concept to students, to get them involved in why should I be interested in something? And if you can get a specific person or a personal experience, it really gets people more motivated to follow that idea as opposed to stating facts.
Exactly.
That reminds me, Marianne, that reminds me of when we was having Indian Day at the school, and we had all of these cultural consultants coming in and doing these different activities. And of course, we had a couple storytellers, and then I was at the basket making table, and we didn't have a chairs. And so I said, I'll just go into this classroom real quick and grab a chair for us. And so I walked in there, and here's all these little kids sitting down, and they're like, oh, good, our presenter is here. And I'm like, what was your presenter gonna do? They're gonna tell us a story. And like, I don't never really consider myself a storyteller. Like, my sister's a great storyteller. She builds it all up to this big climax, and and I like had to string practically every traditional story I knew together to fill up the time for those little kids. So a couple of times of that, and I'm developing my storytelling skills.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Getting put on the spot will do that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done some work with volunteer mediators, and an essential part of it is for people to hear the other person's experience and be able to listen to it so that they start to feel some empathy for what that person has experienced. And a few years ago, one of our other trainers introduced, he said, just tell us your story.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that asking, tell us your story, was a very relaxing way of telling us, well, what happened to you? How do you feel about it? So yeah, storytelling appears in so many parts of our lives, in our religious gatherings and with our friends, and our Saturday nights or our Monday mornings. There's always stories to tell. I got very interested in putting together the story that I used for that video about 15 years ago. A friend of mine remarked to me, he had children that were leaving home, going off to school, and I have children that have left. And he remarked, I don't think I haven't let my children know what my values are. I don't think I've really instructed them the way I think I should have. And I listened to him talk about how he wanted to put his beliefs down. And I realized I really want to do that too, but I don't want to write a sermon. I want to write stories about what I've experienced and let my children and anyone else gather from that a sense of my values, their own values.
That's beautiful, Chip. It reminds me of that whole credo kind of way of looking at it. I also feel that the stories, personally give me value. I do original stories, and sometimes for kids, sometimes for adults. And the process of kind of creating this story into sort of the way where I want to have that squeezed down into a nugget somehow, reinforces the good values that I cherish, but I don't always adhere to. So again, it's sort of back to that way of dealing with a stronger, deeper relationship, not only with your people, but yourself and your place, especially. I started telling stories because I wanted my kids to grow up with a sense of place and not the Hansel and Gretel and things that I grew up with as the fairy tales that were the only stories that I kind of grew up with as a suburbanite. But that grounding in place was really important. And I feel like my storytelling has only evolved to this point where my grandkids are really getting it deeper. My kids, yeah, but my grandkids are really getting my storytelling more now. And it's not so much that it's mine, it's that they are hearing the stories of this place and it feels like it's interwoven in their being.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You're passing it on.
Yeah.
How to tell stories.
Ali, that's really helpful for me in terms of trying to think about this thing called storytelling, because I mean, it's funny. I'm out interpreting nature to people all the time. I'm always guiding people on walks. And I was trying to pull together, well, obviously, actually, that's a story, but how do I get to that story and why am I telling it? And what feels to me, as I've heard it from all of you, is that as you talk about whatever you're talking about, your faces light up. You're really engaged in what you're saying because it matters to you. And somehow it's, for me anyway, I only feel if I've got a story to tell, if it's something that somehow has hooked me and got me impassioned. And then there's a story to tell. And the moment that it really gets to being rote, it's like, it feels like the story's gone. Then that's another story for another time, or somebody else could tell that now. And maybe I don't have that story anymore. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but I was impressed both by Margo and you, Leanne. When I came here, I did not know anything about our native culture at all, like that there was one. I didn't know anything about any tribe anywhere in California. I didn't know anything about California except the redwoods were here. Really, I didn't know anything. I was a tree hugger without knowing any trees. So I've come a long way, baby. But I also have realized how many toes I've trodden on all over the place with not knowing, talk about not being woke. It was really new to me, and digging and trying to figure out who lived here before I got here, has been really big to me. So I don't know why I'm saying all of this, but this resonates for me. It's like all of your stories are like, dropping into me and gift me with an added depth in my own life and in my understanding of our culture up here.
I felt like I've been an educator for the last 7-8 years, because even though I'm going to go to my business, even though I put wild thimbleberry jam, people go, are you picking those in your backyard, or where do you buy them from? They have no idea, even though we put wild in front of our products, that we actually forage for our products. And we do this on a daily basis for 6 months out of the year. We are traveling somewhere to pick something, what is ever out there ready to be picked. And it's been a big education with me and my family to educate us on what we do, because to every other customer, I'll say, or other person that comes up to me wants to know how big is our farm? They always want to know, how big is our farm? And I'm going, no, we don't have a farm. We forage for these berries every day somewhere in Humboldt or Del Norte County.
Yeah.
Must take a lot of thimbleberries to make a jar.
Oh,
Thousands and thousands and thousands. Yes.
Wow.
See, now we know.
Yesterday I went out and I dug up some wild potatoes and planted them at 2 of our different schools so the kids can start learning more about, they'll learn about it in the school setting, but they'll see what they look like and how to do it, and so that they can go out and forage in the forest. The forest is our garden.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Beautiful.
I also want to share that the first story I ever heard Marianne tell has stuck with me to this day, about a wee little flower on the dunes, a buckwheat plant that was one little certain kind of bee would pollinate. Marianne, I will never forget that story because you opened me into this wee little plant.
These stories.
Thank you.
We all have stories.
I have a question for Allie. When do you predict North Coast Storytellers is going to have another event?
Oh, I couldn't tell you, it's been a challenge. People are going their separate ways a little bit with that. And of course the pandemic really didn't help. If there was enough interest, I would love to get it going again and just have that more of a guild kind of thing. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I haven't had a lot of interaction other than our usual kind of library tellings and things like that.
So I'm thinking maybe we should wind it up a little. I love hearing the stories though. How do you guys feel? So for those of you who are on with us, we're sort of doing a round. I didn't say that in the beginning, sort of just sitting around the table and talking together about the project we all participated in, and having you all listen to us, those of you who are still online with us, because the stories are here amongst the people on the screen and within you as well. I kind of want to keep going, but
Well, I'm wondering if we could encourage people who are watching to submit stories, because American Portrait is going to continue to accept stories until June. Is that right?
Yeah, the end of June.
Till the end of June. And then they're going to look at a way to archive these stories so that they will be somewhere that people can look at them whenever they wanted to. So it's a way to get your story in this permanent archive forever. So yes. I would definitely like to encourage people, if, that was one of the hardest things I think about doing this project is whenever I was, like when Laurie and I were in the woods in Arcata, and I run into this young man and he's like, "What are you doing?" Because I've got a camera and stuff. And I said, "Well, we're working on this project. It's from PBS. It's called America." And I went into this whole conversation with him. He was like, he was totally sucked in. He totally wanted to do that. But it was like trying to put the word out for something like this in a more generic way to the public isn't the same as having that conversation with people where you're saying, this is what we're doing and we're gathering these stories and we want you to be part of this. We want everyone who feels like telling a story to be part of this. And it's just, I think, I just feel like that's, this is our time to reach out to the people that are watching this and say, please submit your stories. Please share your stories with American Portrait, because all of your stories are so worthwhile and important. And I just really like to encourage people to do that. And then Katie, do you want to talk about your new project that you have?
Wait, before we get to that.
Okay.
What about the others here? What would all of you on screen here say to the viewers? I don't know how many are left out there, but what would you say to everybody to encourage them to do this? It's not that hard. Backing up, Humboldt County and Del Norte County, we're really good at writing our stories. Video seems to be a challenge for us. So there's some very nice written words out there too on American Portrait. But what would you tell our viewers?
You can do it.
It's fun.
Just 60 seconds, yes.
Is there still, I haven't visited the website for a while, but there was a map. And you
Yes.
could focus in on the map, get it smaller and smaller scale, and zero in on any part of the country and view stories from that part of the country.
Oh, cool.
And so I found that really interesting. And I think just seeing what other people have contributed will trigger get your own juices flowing so that you have an idea of what you'd like. What story would you like to tell? What would you like to write? And then there's also acceptance of, what is it, up to 5 photographs, and they can be photographs of nature, of family, of art that you've created. So there are various ways to present. And I'm really hoping that more of my friends will do it, because I want to read what they contribute. I wanted to ask Jenny, did you see the chat? Lisa B wrote in and said, I needed to hear Jenny. She's fixing to travel long car camping without a dog.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm glad for him. I didn't see it. I'm not too savvy with this mode, and I wasn't for doing the portraits either. So I was one of those freaked out people who wasn't going to be able to do that. I did figure out the technology, but mainly it was very helpful to have Ali tell me, suggest to all of us in our class, to look at some of the American portraits. So that's not one thing you guys out there who are going to do your portraits. I would recommend that you do is you find American portraits and spend a half hour or 45 minutes just looking at the latest ones that came in or whatever it is. I couldn't fiddle around with them, but listening to other people's stories, it was like, oh my God, wait a minute. Oh, really? Oh, I just told a friend of mine who is maybe actually watching. I hope she's watching. Elaine, if you're watching, you do see you have to do a story, don't you? Because it's like you see something that somebody else has done, and then suddenly you realize, oh, that's what would be, that I would like other people to know that about me. And you could see that even in those tiny pieces in the movie. I mean, not just our longer pieces, but boy, how powerful they are. And I don't think you know that until, so I think look first and then have a go at it. And you can feel like such a fool. I did it 10 times. You know, it's like, oh God, really? Oh no, did I say the same word 20 times? And then I got bored with it and I came back and finally just did it. And that was the way it was. Now, Jennifer wanted to take me to the Redwoods, so it went on longer. But otherwise, you really can just do it, and it's good. Go to it.
I'll admit I was
your story, Jenny. It was. Go ahead, Marianne.
Oh, I'll admit I was nervous in front of a camera, but if you just think of you're talking to a friend or a family member, it's okay. I encourage people to do it. And if video is not your format, a written story is just as good.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Katie.
Yes.
Jennifer did it, and Ali too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Margo, you wanted to add something, right?
I just wanted to say that I just loved your story, Jenny. It was so empowering, and the way that the snippets of everybody's stories was put together, I I just totally loved it, you know, and it's just everyday people doing everyday stuff, and it was really awesome. It would be really, really cool if we could get more young people to just like use their phones and do some little short blips of what they're doing. It would be awesome. So I really encourage young people to join the American Portrait. And let's see you on here.
Maybe that'll become the next thing. And TikTok will be passé.
Right? So you have till the end of June to submit. To those who are still on here, it's it's pbs.org/American Portrait. You can go there, or you can just type in American Portrait PBS and it will come up. And go in there. There's been over 14,000 stories submitted, and more than that of people going in and just looking at the stories. They're keeping track. Every time you go in and just look at a story, they're like, boom, we got another person looking at our project. This was a year-long project. It was the biggest project that PBS has done. I think they started it because of it's the 50th anniversary of PBS. I mean, we are all part of this project, and Humboldt County and Delnart County and your friends across the country, encourage them to do it. You can take a cell phone, have a friend do it, mask up, do it that way, or do it yourself. You can just do a little, I saw somebody do that for 10 seconds and it caught my attention. Oh, but it's a great opportunity. And again, it is, I wish they would keep it up longer, but they're not. I'm making faces in the camera now. So it's up till June 30th. And after that, the website will be archived and available for anyone to experience the stories for years to come. Years, you guys, years. After we're dead and gone, it's still gonna be there. That's the thought. Keep your story there. Put your story there. It could be just a little story. Participate. They say here, PBS and American Portrait say that they're trying to get it into the Library of Congress, so that they will have a catalog of it, American Portrait stories there as well. And there is a book. It's not, I keep seeing the book, but I haven't seen the book. Not out in print as of yet. It'll be out in June 15th, if they say here. And it's published by Harper One. And there's going to be images in there. We may be in there. I don't know. It's the story of us, told by us. The story of us told by us. And KEET-TV does have a couple of more projects coming up. We've got another story project that I haven't really published yet. It's snapshots, family album. We want to capture the stories again of Humboldt County. It's along the line of what Henry's doing on finding your roots. Who are we? Again, who are we as a people here in the county? I'm working with the Humboldt Historical Society and the Clark Memorial Museum, Historical Museum, to collect stories. We're collecting stories of our past and the people who are here now. So if you have a story, contact us that you want to share. It has to be a minute, up to 3 minutes long, about who you are as a people. I see a mother and daughter on here. You could do it. You guys, you got stories. All of us, all of you on the screen have stories. People who are still on with us, you have stories. Contact KEET. We're right here. We want to get your story. Another thing that's coming up on KEET is studio space. We captured the stories of artists in Humboldt County. Not all of them, because there's a lot. We captured 26 artists, and this premieres on Friday, April 2nd at 8:30 p.m. It's going to be every Friday for 13 weeks, and we'll probably have repeats throughout the month. So you can capture that. Lots of things going on at KEET. So we're wrapping up. Any last thoughts that you want to share with everybody? And I want to thank you all for joining us too.
Thank you so much for having us. It was nice to meet all of you and hear your different stories.
We should wave goodbye.
I also want to thank Allie and Jennifer for helping us do this, and David, who's over here, who's running everything behind us. I want to thank Radical Media, who worked with us, PBS and American Portrait, the whole team there. They worked with KEET-TV.
And North Coast Growers Association, Portia Bramble and Laura Hughes, they really helped us out when we went out into the farmers markets to do some recording.
And Ink People, Center for the Arts.
And Ink People. Great.
Thanks for all the encouragement.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo.
We could do hugs.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.